Hello everybody and welcome to our training on understanding building and physical premises safety in early education programs, including expectations from the Texas Child Care Minimum Standards. My name is Tim the trainer, and I'm happy to share this information with you today. Before we get started, let's just go over some very successful training tips to help you with your program. This course does have a course ID number with TechPEDS, the Texas Early Childhood Professional Development System. So please make sure that your personal TechPEDS ID number is entered on your Tim the Trainer portal before you complete your assessment. That way your certificate of completion will be automatically uploaded into your personal TechPEDS account. If you have any questions about the training that you're taking right now or any training on our website, you can always reach out to us either by going to our website, timthetrainer.com, and in the upper right-hand corner, you can send us a direct message. You can also call us or email with any questions that you have, or if you need more information beyond the scope of the training material. Lastly, remember, according to the Child Care Minimum Standards, all trainings must be completed in a reasonable amount of time, meaning the total number of clock hours that you complete in a single day cannot exceed the total number of hours that you worked in that day. This is going to keep you in compliance with child care licensing and also keep your program in compliance with Texas Workforce Commission and wage and hour laws. Y'all ready to get started? All right, here we go. Our objectives for this training: we're going to identify common hazards in the building and physical premises that pose safety risks to the children in licensed child care centers. We're going to describe effective strategies to prevent injuries by maintaining safe indoor and outdoor environments, and demonstrate compliance with state licensing requirements related to building and premises safety. Let's take a quick look at what are the requirements in the Child Care Minimum Standards when it comes to building premises safety. So first off, I want to touch on terms and definitions in the Child Care Minimum Standards. So the definition of grounds or premises include any parcel of land where the child care center is located, and any building, other structure, body of water, play equipment, the street, the sidewalk, the walkway, the driveway, the parking garage, or parking lot on the parcel. Basically, everything in and around your child care center is considered the grounds or premises. So when we talk about being totally aware of your building premises, being aware of possible hazards or risks, it's not just what's in the classroom, but it's other areas of the building, outside of the building, on the playground, and even in your parking lot and walkways. You need to be aware of these areas in the event of an emergency or in the event that there is a possible hazard or risk. We do have training requirements, which is why you're watching this video. What must your orientation to your program include? Every single employee that works in a licensed child care center, your orientation must include understanding building and physical premises safety, including identification and protection from hazards that can cause bodily injury, such as electrical hazards, bodies of water, vehicular traffic, etc. Also, you're going to see under Standard 1309 what areas of training must the annual training include, and it's the same thing. You're not only going to complete this training upon hire, but this training is required every single year. Understanding building and physical premises safety, once again, including identification and protection from hazards that can cause bodily injury, such as electrical hazards, body of water, and vehicular traffic. You know, I want y'all to kind of understand that understanding your building premises is an ongoing ongoing expectation. All right. You may start your program, at a particular time, and you do an assessment of your building and your premises, but over time things change. Situations change. Our buildings get older. The environment and the neighborhoods change. So don't ever get the blind eye and think, well, I remember that, we have this particular situation within our building or outside of our building. Oh, everything is safe, because things change. You don't want to use the blind eye. You want to actually look at what you actually see to determine that the building is safe for the children and the building is safe for you and the other adults that are present. Now, let's take a look at the safety precautions that you have to take to protect children in your child care center. And once again, this is coming straight from the Child Care Minimum Standards 3701. So all areas accessible to children must be free from hazards, including the following. And we're going to talk about a few of these things a couple of times in this training, all right? So for example, electrical outlets that are accessible to children younger than 5 years must have a child-proof cover, or you are using safety outlets where the safety mechanism is built into the outlet. Those are very popular these days. They're very affordable. That is the recommended course of action, is to have safety outlets, but you could also have a traditional electrical outlet with a safety cover. And once again, this is required for children younger than 5 years of age. If you have children over the age of 5, then safety covers or safety outlets are not required. If you happen to have 220-volt electrical connections within the children's reach, they also must be covered with a screen or guard. This is not common in most early education programs and after-school programs, but it is something that could come about. We don't see this very often, but just be aware of that one. Air conditioners, electric fans, heaters, they must be mounted out of children's reach and have safeguards that keep the children from being injured. Look, I know that we live in Texas and some of you are from other states. It gets really hot. It gets really steamy. Some of us have a higher thermostat inside of our body than others, right? But if you are bringing in fans into the classroom, you have to make sure that they are safe, that they are out of the reach of children, right? And that, you're looking out for their best interest while, maintaining your comfort. So when I see people cited for number 3, it's usually when a teacher takes it upon themselves to bring in a fan from home because they're hot, and it's not mounted appropriately or used appropriately, and it ends up as a deficiency. Worst case scenario, a child gets severely injured with that fan that was brought in. If you run into a situation where you have sliding doors, glass that is in sliding doors must be clearly marked with decals or other materials placed at the child's eye level so that you don't have the child that runs into the glass. Again, the common mistake right here is that glass sliding doors are marked, but it's not marked at child eye level. And you can use some type of decal or indicator that the child would be able to recognize that that is glass. All right? Even though they can't read, you can have some type of indicator right there to keep them safe. Play materials and equipment must be safe and free from sharp or rough edges and toxic paints. So all of the toys, manipulatives, and equipment that you're using both in the classroom and out of the classroom constantly need to be monitored for safety. As things get older, they get worn. Toys and plastic toys especially start to crack. They can have sharp edges, especially if you're in like a toddler 2-year-old classroom. and they like to chew on some of that stuff. Be careful of that. Once there is a sharp or rough edge, it's got to come out of the classroom, okay? And it's everybody's responsibility to make sure that your classroom is safe for the children. Poisonous or potentially harmful plants must be inaccessible to children. Look, we love nature in the classroom. We love for there to be the experience for children to interact with things that are growing. Love it. Fantastic science right there. But you got to be really careful with the plants that you are bringing in, making sure that, again, they're not poisonous, they're not potentially harmful. When you're buying plants for your classroom, pay close attention to those warning labels that come with it, usually the little plastic thing that sticks in the dirt, all right? If it's something poisonous or potentially harmful, it can't be in the classroom. If you're in an infant classroom, bottle warmers must be inaccessible to all children and only used according to manufacturer's instructions. Very important right here. If you are buying a bottle warmer for your program, I would save the manufacturer's instructions, put it in a file, so that way when childcare regulations comes in to do an inspection, if there are any questions about the bottle warmer that is being used, you're going to be able to refer back to the manufacturer's instructions. The other thing that I have to say about bottle warmers, you may want to check with your general liability company. They may have very specific rules about the use of bottle warmers in your program. There are a lot of commercial general liability companies that will prohibit these from being used. So make sure that you're checking not just with the manufacturer's instructions, but also make sure you're not violating your insurance company's expectations. All storage chests, boxes, trunks, and similar items with hinged lids must be equipped with a lid support so that it doesn't come down and entrap a child. This is to hold the lid open in any position. And chests, boxes, trunks have to be equipped with ventilation holes. There must not be a latch that might close and trap a child inside. So you want to be cautious like home center furniture that is in your classroom, the little refrigerators and stoves and sinks that you have in your dramatic play area. That could be an entrapment. Excuse me. If a child is able to crawl inside and possibly be entrapped. So you want to pay close attention to those items right there. All bodies of water, wading pools, hot tubs, bird baths, fountains, buckets, and rain barrels, all of these items must be inaccessible to children, okay? Now, being in a licensed center, you're probably not going to have a few of these items, but if you are operating in a licensed or registered home, some of these items may be present. Again, they have to be inaccessible to children. Last thing, and this is a big one right here, all televisions must be anchored so that they cannot tip over, all right? A television may be anchored to a rolling cart if it is anchored in a way that the entire cart won't tip over. We've actually had multiple incidents where children have pulled TVs off of rolling carts or off of shelves and severely injured or killed a child. So we want to be very careful in those situations too. The next thing I want to talk about, again, is a very serious situation. And I know that this training today is about understanding building premises and safety. This is not a training on emergency preparedness plans. That's a completely separate training that we offer. But I wanted to include this piece as well. How can I ensure the safety of children from other persons? So it is, once again, everybody's responsibility to make sure that children are safe at all times. And that's not just from building premises and furniture and equipment, but it's also from people. Okay, so you're going to see right here where people whose behavior and or health status that pose an immediate threat or danger to the health and safety of the children must not be present when the children are in care. So if you run into a situation where it could be a parent or guardian of a child, it could be a disgruntled employee that becomes triggered, and the way they are behaving becomes a threat or a possible threat to the individuals in your program, that person has to go. They need to be escorted out. Local law enforcement needs to be called if needed. Okay? But when we are in our licensed child care centers, we have to act in a professional manner. And when there are questions or concerns, they have to be handled in a professional way. All right? Can't come in acting like a crazy person when the world is not going your way and when you get triggered. Okay? Remember, we are modeling behavior to young children. We are modeling behavior to other individuals. People cannot consume alcohol or controlled substances without a prescription in the child care center, during transportation, and on field trips. This would include, but not limited to, the use of marijuana, whether you are smoking it or you are eating it. You just cannot do that in Texas right now, as of August of 2025. That is illegal activity to begin with, but definitely cannot consume during working hours and while you are at work. All right. There's a lot of questions about the legalizing marijuana at some point in time. It is legal in many, many other states. If and when it becomes legal in Texas, you basically treat it the same as alcohol. While drinking alcohol may be legal in the state of Texas, you cannot be under the influence or consume alcohol while at work. Okay, especially when working with young children. So it's going to be no different with, the marijuana or those types of situation. And people must not smoke any e-cigarettes, vapes, tobacco products, or otherwise use any other tobacco product while at the child care center on the premises, okay, on the playground and transportation vehicles, and while on field trips. And again, for this one, go back and look at that definition of premises. All right, so you cannot smoke or use tobacco products, not just in your building and on your playground, but that includes the parking lot, the walkways, all of those items that we mentioned earlier. Okay, so if you need to go have a smoky treat, you got to go off the premises to do that. A little homework assignment. There's going to be a few homework assignments that I'm going to ask that you do once you complete this video. So once you complete the video, you're not going to be done with this training. You need to get to know your building premises. All right. Find a relocation diagram. They should be posted all around your school. Any room that children have access to should have a emergency relocation diagram. That is a really good way of getting to know your building. Not just your classroom, but everything. Remember, you could have a situation where a child is a runner, a child gets out of your classroom, and you're going to need to know the layout of your building to be able to find that child. Okay? So really important, especially if you're a brand new employee at your facility, that you spend some time getting to know your building and not just looking at this diagram, but actually walking around the building, exploring the building, really getting to know it. All right. Now, if you're really up for a challenge and if you're physically able to do this, I encourage you to get down on your hands and knees and crawl around your building on your hands and knees. That way you can see your building premises from the child's point of view. And when you see the building from the child's point of view, you're going to have a completely different perspective. All right. So again, if you're physically able to do this, I think it's a really good idea. All right. But get to know your building the best you can, inside and outside. And anytime you see possible risk, possible hazards, let's write that down and let's have some conversations about it with your school family. Okay. Closets that they could get into, storage rooms that they could get into, pieces of the wall that have a hole in it that could be a hazard, electrical outlets, plumbing that may be exposed to children. The list just goes on and on of things that we need to be aware of that could be a possible hazard. I'm going to go through a list of some of the most common hazards and risks that we have within our building. So what I would really like for you to do, if you're willing and able, get a copy of that building diagram that we just talked about in the previous slide. And as I go through the rest of this training, not only do I want you to listen and take notes, but I also kind of want you to be reflecting on that building diagram and be thinking about how are we going to keep the children safe and how are we going to prevent them from getting into hazardous situations. All right? So lots of reflecting right here. And some of the items that I'm about to go over we may have already discussed, but if I'm discussing them again, that just means they're even more important. So the first thing, children are never left unattended. Obviously, this would be a supervision violation. Children must be supervised at all times. Supervision is defined by sight, by sound, by awareness, by positioning, by proximity. All right? So always have good systems in place to always track children's attendance and always know exactly how many children you are supposed to have, how many children do you have. I always recommend at least 3 different ways that you track attendance and make it to where everybody is involved in supervision and accountability. It's not just the classroom teacher, but you have the director or assistant director that's constantly walking around the building, taking count, how many children, how many adults are in the classroom. The parents that are coming in, they're signing the children in, they're signing the children out, so they've got some accountability to support attendance tracking. Even the children, I've created home school boards. So whenever the child comes in, they move their picture from home to school. When they leave in the evenings, they move their picture from school to home. That helps the children even have accountability for supervision and attendance tracking. Once again, electrical outlets are covered with safety plugs to prevent electrical shock, or your center installs safety outlets where safety plugs are not required. I have this on here twice for a very particular reason. This is one of the top cited items in the childcare minimum standards. Childcare centers get cited for electrical outlets not having a safety cover a lot. All right, this is a big hazard. This is a big risk. So we want to make sure everyone fully understands the expectations that if you take that safety cover off to plug in a CD player or to plug in the vacuum cleaner or whatever it is that you're plugging in, once you're done with that, make sure that that safety plug goes back on. Those of you that may have janitorial crews that come in and clean your building at night, you know, this is very common that they will pull out the safety covers but not put them back in. So whenever you're opening your classroom first thing in the morning, really important that you do a visual check to make sure that all those safety covers have been put back on. If you are experiencing that situation, obviously you need to have a serious conversation with your janitorial crew and let them know the position that they are putting you in and they are placing your children at risk. They need to be held accountable for that. If you have electrical cords in your classroom, they have to be out of children's reach. That would be an electrical cord going from an object to the electrical outlet. Also could be an extension cord that may be used. You got to make sure that those are behind a shelf. They are up high, whatever it may take, but they do have to be out of children's reach. So again, I know that you're doing exciting projects in the classroom. You might be bringing in some small appliances to do some cooking projects or science projects. Just keep in mind, even with these temporary projects or temporary pieces of equipment, those electrical cords are not in children's reach. Okay, so again, this is a very commonly cited item right here. You want to be careful with this one. If you are in a situation where you have blinds in your classroom to cover the windows, cords from the blinds or drapes are out of the reach of children. And this is mainly if you have the string blind, or the blinds that have the string for the drapes, to pull it up and down. They need to be rolled up and out of the reach of children. Now, a lot of the mini blinds that are manufactured these days have the stick or the plastic pole rather than the cord. So you would be okay in those situations, all right? But otherwise, you want to be careful, and not just about the strangulation from the cord that is dangling, but also the end. You've got that cap on the end of the cord that can very easily be pulled off or broken off, and that would be a choking hazard. So a few things that you need to be aware of right there. I'm not a big fan of blinds in a classroom for multiple different reasons, but I do know some of you still have these. If you do have them, make sure that they're in compliance. Make sure that the cord is out of the reach of children. Look, we got to do a lot of sanitizing and a lot of disinfecting in our early education programs and after-school programs. We have a responsibility to keep children safe and healthy at all times. So yes, we experience a lot of time with cleaning supplies, all right? When you have your cleaning supplies out, they need to be clearly marked and they need to be locked up and are inaccessible to children. So if you are sanitizing or disinfecting, you don't want to set that bottle down on a classroom table that a child could reach over and grab it. Definitely don't want to leave this on the floor to where it's accessible to children. Make sure that these are put up high somewhere, and if they're not in use, they need to be locked away. Okay, so they need to be inside of a cabinet with a safety latch, something like that. Again, this is a very commonly cited item right here. It's also a very large safety risk. Children being able to get a hold of those cleaning products can cause a whole lot of harm. Not just the fact that a child could ingest it and drink it, but some of it, even if the child sprays it and gets it on their skin, we have seen several situations where children have experienced chemical burns due to cleaning supplies that were left out and somehow it got on the child. If your program administers medication, medication is to be stored in the front office and needs to be inaccessible to children. This includes, but not limited to, your personal medication as an adult that you may bring to work with you. If you have a prescription medication that you're required to have with you at work, or even something like a pain reliever that you may bring to work, they have to be inaccessible to children. We have had several cases right here in the state of Texas where children have gotten a hold of over-the-counter medication that the teacher brought in, and ate it. And there was one situation where an entire toddler room had to be rushed to the emergency room to have their stomachs pumped because of a teacher leaving their personal medication out, and the children got a hold of it. The only exception to this one right here would be EpiPens. EpiPens do need to be easily accessible to the adult in order for them to administer in a timely manner. All right. So if you can lock these up in the classroom, again, lock them in a cabinet with a safety lock or a latch on it to where they're not accessible to children. That is a good recommendation. If you're keeping EpiPens up in the front office, depending on your building premises, depending on where your classroom is located, if you have a child that goes into shock and you need to administer that EpiPen, by the time you get a hold of the front office, they find the child's EpiPen, they get it back to the classroom. You may have missed your opportunity to give that EpiPen in an effective way. Okay, so have a conversation about that within your program. Decide what is in the best interest of the children and how you can be in compliant with that scenario. Adding on top of that, it's not just medications, but any personal belonging that is brought into the program by an adult needs to be locked up in cabinets and that are inaccessible to children. Look, we could have a little scavenger hunt right now, and you could open up your purse or your backpack or your bag and just kind of take a look in there and see how many harmful items are in your purse or your bag that could be harmful to children. And if they were to get a hold of it, there's a risk right there. So be aware of that. In my schools, I have always provided lockers for my teachers so that they can lock their personal belongings up in a locker. That is a really good recommendation and a safe thing to do. Some of you may not have that opportunity, so putting those personal belongings in a cabinet with a safety latch. Just don't leave your purse or your bag laying out for children to get it. And y'all, I have witnessed this so many times. You know, the teacher comes in, they've got their backpack or their bag, they walk into the classroom, the children are so excited to see them and they want to run over and give big hugs. And so the teacher puts the bag down on the ground while they're welcoming and hugging the children. And then you just kind of get distracted and go off on your merry way. And this bag or this backpack is left. And then the next thing you know, the children are getting into it. And who knows what they're coming across, right? So really important right there. I may be one of the #1 coffee drinkers in the world. I love my coffee. I must have my coffee. I understand the need for that caffeine. All right. But if you are bringing hot beverages into your center, I would strongly encourage these to be finished before you enter the classroom. Now, I'm going to refer you to your program's policies on beverages in the classroom. I have seen some centers that have allowed beverages in the classroom as long as they have a secure lid on them. But most centers that I work with do not allow hot beverages in the classroom. You need to make sure that you plan accordingly so that you can get that coffee, you can get that caffeine before you enter the classroom and take on the responsibility of the group of children. Even when you go to some of the coffee shops and they put the lid on that appears to be secure, those are really easy to pop off. All right. Now, if you get more of the commercial cups that have the screw-on lid, you can discuss that with your center management, and you can have the policy that best suits your program. Main thing is just be consciously aware of children coming into contact with hot beverages that may burn them or they may digest and cause some issues. We've kind of talked about cleaning supplies. Just once again, adding to that the disinfecting and sanitizing solutions. Make sure that they're out of reach of children and they're locked up when they're not in use. But with that being said, also making sure that your classroom has disinfecting and sanitizing solutions available each day. If you are using a commercial product to sanitize and disinfect your program, it has to be registered with the Environmental Protection Agency. And you're going to use that sanitizer or disinfectant based on the manufacturer's instructions. If you are using a bleach water solution has to be made daily. It is only good for approximately 8 hours. All right, so if you're a program that is open from 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., if you make bleach water bottles, disinfectant solution in the morning, you're probably going to have to make it again in the afternoon, because after about 8 hours, it's no longer effective. All right, and that is for bleach water solutions. There's not a lot of programs that still use bleach water solutions. Most are using commercial products, but in the event that you are, just kind of keep that in mind. Anytime you have garbage in your program, any garbage that could contain a bodily fluid needs to be covered right here. So diaper pails are covered and are inaccessible to children. Probably the biggest deficiency I see with this one, lids to the trash can, lids to the diaper pails do get pulled off from time to time. But the size of the diaper pail is the bigger concern. And even if it's sitting on the floor, if it is a smaller diaper pail, the children can still get their hands on it. All right, and they want to start playing with the lid and flapping it, right? They're at risk of getting bodily fluid on them. So kind of take a good look at that. Maybe we need to reposition our trash cans or our diaper pails so that the children don't have access to them, especially depending on the size. If your diaper pail is in the classroom, but it is kind of taller so the children can't reach the top, always remember to make sure you sanitize and disinfect the sides and the front, just in case some bodily fluid has leaked out and gotten on the outside surface of the diaper pail or trash can. Once again, not just diaper pails, but waste baskets that have had bodily fluid placed in them. They need to be disposed of. And what really is helpful is if you can have a waste basket that is red, all right? So that they are easily identified as a waste basket that could potentially have bodily fluid. Now, if you're not able to do that, okay, then definitely make sure that your waste baskets are covered and that anything with a bodily fluid is disposed of immediately, okay? Here's my kind of 2 cents on this one. Really, anything we throw away in childcare could potentially have a bodily fluid on it. Whether it's saliva, spit, blood, urine, feces, mucus, right? The list just goes on and on. My recommendation is that every trash can, every waste basket in your program have a lid on it, all right? Because you just never know when something is going to have a bodily fluid. Make sure that you're constantly checking to ensure that toys are not choking hazards. The best rule of thumb here is a toilet paper roll. So get that toilet paper roll. If a toy can fit through it, it's a choking hazard and it should not be in the classroom. Pay close attention to toys and equipment that may come in from home. Children like to bring in some of their prized possessions. Parents seem to allow children to bring in items from home. I'm sure a lot of you have a policy prohibiting that. Sometimes it still happens. But the choking hazards usually come from items that are coming in from the outside. So while you may do really good safety checks on the furniture and equipment that was purchased by the school for the school, it's the things that come in from home that seem to cause the largest risk. All right? So constantly be on the lookout for these choking hazards. This is a big one with me. Paper clips, push pins, and staples are not used in areas where children are present. Y'all, these are huge safety risks. You know, you may be stapling something to the wall, which is all fine and good until that staple comes out. Okay? And especially when you're redecorating and you're removing those staples and, you know, the staples are flying. Children can very easily pick up these items. I've seen them put them in their mouth, stick them up noses and ears, you know, scratch themselves with the skin, puncture themselves. There's just so many risks right here. If you've got push pins, I have always prohibited push pins from like being in the building. Like not just the classroom, I don't want them in the building, period. Because even if you say I'm buying push pins for the front office, they tend to find their way to the classroom. And that is a ginormous hazard right there on things that could happen. And even something as simple as a paper clip could turn into a hazard right there. There are lots of other ways that you can secure evidence of learning to your walls so that you can proudly display those for your families. Especially nowadays, we have so many different options for you. There's really no reason to have staples or push pins, you know, anywhere near the children or where the children are going to be present. When you are changing a diaper and you have a child on a diaper changing station, children are never to be left alone on a changing table. Always make sure that the adult keeps one hand on the child at all times. If your diaper changing table is manufactured with a safety strap, okay, the childcare minimum standards say that the safety strap must be used at all times if the piece of equipment was manufactured with the safety strap. Otherwise, the adult must keep their hand on the child. I'm going to recommend both, all right? That even when the child is strapped onto the diaper changing table, the adult still has a hand on the child at all times, all right? The worst thing that could happen is that child rolling off a diaper changing table. The amount of lifelong injury that could occur from a child rolling off of a diaper changing table, you just don't even want to think about this. It's really bad, okay? Unfortunately, we have seen these situations many times in the past. We don't want that to happen to you. If you have cribs that the sides of the crib fold down, make sure that the sides of the infant cribs are closed and locked, both when the child is in the crib and when the child is out of the crib. All right? You may unlatch that and pull it down to be able to get the child out of the crib, but as soon as the child is out of the crib, make sure that you close it and lock it even when not in use. That is good practice right there. But again, we don't want a situation where a child is placed in a crib, it is not latched, the child climbs out, falls to the floor, and again, the injuries from that fall could be deadly, they could be lifelong injuries. Once again, we're going to talk about toys and furniture are in good repair with no sharp edges or splinters. Again, it is everybody's responsibility to make sure that your toys and equipment are maintained and in good repair. I strongly encourage you all furniture and equipment that is purchased for your early education classroom, make sure that you're purchasing these items from a company that specializes in commercial use. That way the toys and the furniture are built to withstand, the amount of children that we have in our classrooms. If you go to a retail establishment and you buy furniture and equipment that is meant to be used at home, that is not manufactured for the wear and tear that we have in our programs. And very quickly, they are not safe for the children. With this being said, I also strongly encourage that you do not accept donations from parents. A lot of times when mom and dad and guardian are cleaning out the house and cleaning out the child's bedroom, they come across toys that they don't want anymore, so they tend to want to bring them to us. Y'all, again, I would not accept those. They are not manufactured for commercial use. You do not have the original packaging. You don't know what the manufacturer's recommendations are for use. It's just creating a very large risk. If you have rugs in your classroom, you want to make sure that your rugs have a non-skid backing. We don't want children or adults slipping and falling or tripping on rugs or carpets. So most of them, again, if you're buying classroom rugs that are manufactured for commercial use, they usually have the non-skid backing built onto them. If you are going to a retail establishment to purchase rugs, you may have to buy additional non-skid backing to put underneath it. Again, I don't recommend that. I recommend that any rug that you have in your classroom be made for classroom use. That is the safest thing to do right there. Look, we got little bodies all over the place. We've got kids running here and there and everywhere, and you just never know when they're going to show up, when they're being dropped off, when they're being picked up, when they're excited to see the adult that is about to walk in the classroom. Always be consciously aware of where children are located when you're opening and closing doors, all right? Before you open any door, take a good look, listen, look, be aware. But we don't want to knock a child in the head, knock a child over. And when closing doors, make sure that you're consciously aware of the children. We don't want children to get their fingers smashed in the door. This is actually one of the largest insurance claims that we see in licensed childcare, children getting their fingers smashed in doors. So be aware of that. Keep your eyes open, all right? Now, there are some safety mechanisms that can be installed to help prevent, children getting their fingers caught in door jams. They're not 100%, effective. They definitely help in situations, but you still need to be aware where they are located when dealing with opening and closing doors. Be aware of water and the temperature of the water. 120 degrees is kind of the mark that we're looking at right here. I still think that's a little warm myself, but that is the recommendation. Always as the adult, kind of run your hand under the water first before you allow a child to start washing their hands or doing a project. You don't want them to get burned. Children will burn much easier than adults will get burned. So their tolerance is very, very different than our tolerance. You want to be aware of that. Check with your local health department on the ordinance in your area. As far as hot water is concerned, there are a lot of areas that do not require hot water for hand washing. There are some areas that do, but that's going to be based on your local area and what your local health department requires. We talked about the poisonous plants and plants that could be harmful to children. Christmas time is a very common time that people will bring like poinsettias into a classroom. A poinsettia is a poisonous plant. All right, so that would be a prohibited item right there. Once again, we want to encourage plants. We want to encourage life in classrooms. Just be very thorough to make sure that it's safe for the children that you have in care. Knives and other non-age appropriate scissors should always be out of the reach of children. Now, hopefully you're not taking knives into your classroom. I know some of you might be doing special art projects, special cooking projects, things like that. If you're doing this, make sure that they are out of the reach of children and they are removed from that classroom as soon as you are done with that object. All right? But probably the biggest hazard and biggest risk on this one is the adult scissors that are being left at children's reach. Y'all, I have seen situations where a 3-year-old child cut her finger off in a classroom. All right. I had to live through that experience one time. So be very, very aware. Are the scissors that you have in your classroom age appropriate? Okay. Definitely the adult scissors, you don't want to leave those laying around. If you want to get a catalog from your school supplier that has all of the equipment that you order, take a look at the scissors. If you don't know in your classroom, take a look, match the scissor with the scissors in the catalog. Make sure that they are age appropriate for the classroom that you're working in. We have seen this so many times where scissors were purchased for a kindergarten classroom, but over the course of time, they just made their way down to a toddler room, and then boom, you have an incident. I already talked about the recommendation of having 3 different forms of attendance tracking. When we talked about children must be supervised at all times, document, document, document. Remember, if it's not written down, it didn't happen. So be creative with this. What are 3 different ways that you can track attendance? I mentioned earlier, name to face, directors and assistant directors doing half-hour ratio checks, parents signing the children in or out, children doing home and school boards, but it could also be, your meal count sheets. Those of you that may be on the CACFP food program, your meal count sheets is actually a really good form of attendance tracking. It could be roll call sheets. It could be name to face sheets. I have something that I have used in my schools called a transition sheet. If you're interested in seeing a copy of that, just shoot me an email and I'll be happy to share that with you. Just really be consciously aware of how you're tracking attendance and making sure that the children are accounted for at all times. Anytime before you take a child out on the playground, someone should be walking that playground, making sure that it is free of trash and debris. We have a lot of situations where after hours, things are thrown onto our playground. Items are blown onto our playground. Neighborhood animals will come onto our playground and leave some surprises for us, right? There are a lot of different ways that harmful items can end up on your playground. Make it part of your daily routine. Before anyone goes out onto that playground, someone needs to walk it. Make sure that it is checked for trash, for debris, that it's safe. All right? Very, very important right there. Make sure that you're checking children's personal clothing. Make sure that it's appropriate for the weather and that it is safe and free of hazards. If you've got a child wearing a hoodie, if it's got drawstrings on it, that could be a strangulation issue. All right. some of these type of things right here. Now, most of those have been recalled. There is usually some type of safety mechanism on the hoodie rather than the drawstrings, but we do see these from time to time. Always kind of ask yourself, whatever it is the child is wearing, is there a possible risk? Just because mom, dad, or guardian sent that child in that clothing doesn't mean it's okay. All right, you have to look out for the best interest of the child. You have to look out for the best interest of all of the other children in that program, okay? And sometimes the clothing could be a hazard. When taking children out onto the playground, make sure that the adults are zoning the playground so everybody is spread out. You've got adequate supervision. I always say that anytime children are climbing up, you need to have an adult within arm's reach. Remember the laws of gravity. What goes up must eventually come down. So, if you have a child climbing up onto a platform, they're going to slide down a slide. Always make sure that you have an adult very close by to be able to assist and keep that child safe. We want to avoid adults gathering on the playground. When you're socializing and gathering, you're not supervising, okay? So make sure that you're zoning out, making sure you're focused on the children and engaging the children in physical activities. In Texas, it gets really hot outside, especially the time of the year that it is right now. Again, before you go outside, someone needs to go to that playground and check the temperature of the slides. This needs to happen throughout the day, especially closer to the afternoon. Even though you may not have a metal slide, some of the plastic slides that we see, they can still get really hot, all right? So we don't want a child to get burned, whenever playing on some of that type of equipment. If you are in a situation where you are providing water activities for children, water activities are not to be done on cement or extremely hard surfaces. So if you have a grassy area that you're able to do water activities, a splash pad is super awesome if you're able to afford a splash pad for your program. These are the preferred methods right here. But again, you are prohibited from doing water activities on cement or on hard surfaces. So want to make sure you understand that expectation and, of course, the danger that it poses to the children. We talked about doing playground checks earlier in the video, but again, we want to make sure that our playgrounds are always monitored and checked to make sure that there are no splinters, no nails, no screws that are protruding out that could endanger a child. Once again, as this equipment gets older, the weather, the drought, the heat, the rain, all of the above, things like this happen. Things start to splinter. Screws and nails start coming out. As soon as you recognize this, they need to be repaired. All right? Again, I could tell you some really bad stories about children who have been severely injured by screws and nails that were protruding from playground equipment. This does happen, so we want to constantly be doing those playground checks. Playground maintenance checks are to be done at least monthly at your program. I think that's too long. We need to be checking our playground equipment all the time, making sure that it's safe and in good repair for the children. If there are gates around your playground or around your program, they need to be closed at all time. Make sure that they are latched so that the children cannot open the gates. We don't want anyone escaping and wandering away from your program. Now, again, when we talk about latches or locks on gates, you need to refer to your local fire marshal, your local city ordinance. They may have some provisions that prohibit you from latching or locking. They may prohibit you from locking some of these gates due to fire risk. So make sure you're checking with your local area. But definitely they need to be latched so that children are not able to open the gates and wander away from your program. Last thing I have on my list of most common hazards and risks on your building and building premises: make sure children do not play where vehicle traffic is a risk. Now, hopefully you're not taking your children out onto the parking lot for everyday play. That should be common sense right there. But a lot of times we want to have bicycle day or a triathlon and some of these really fun, ancillary events that may be done at your program. If this is something that you're doing, make sure that you block off the parking lot so that there is not vehicular traffic and placing the children at risk. Okay, so that was our training on understanding building and physical premises safety. Now, you're not done yet. Don't turn this video off just yet. You still have quite a bit of work to do. I have gone over some safety precautions and hazards. We talked about your building diagram. We talked about some of the most common risks or hazards and how to keep the children safe. But now it's your turn. If you scan the QR code that is located on the screen, it's going to take you to a building premises safety list. I'm going to encourage you to print that list and start with your individual classroom and then move around the both inside and outside of your building, becoming familiar with your building and also performing an actual assessment of your building premises and physical safety requirements. All right? Don't skip this. It's probably the most important part of this training. It is very critical that you do this. Scan that QR code. It's going to take you to our website, timthetrainer.com. Go to our documents page. You can find the building premises safety checklist. Print that out. Do it on your school. Anything that you may find that you're unable to mark, have a productive and meaningful conversation with your center management and work together to come up with a plan to get those items repaired so that your building will be safe for the children and the adults present. If you have any questions about this training or if you need more information beyond the scope of the training material, we are here for you. Again, you can message me from our website in the top right-hand corner of the screen. You can email, you can call. Again, any questions or if you need more information beyond the scope of the material. Thanks a lot, everyone, and we will see you soon for another training.